how did each of us get to be who we are? And I'm especially thinking that all of us came from a fairly conservative background, family origin. So I'm wondering, I don't think any of us are in that same place anymore. And how did that happen? Yeah.
And I think that's such an important question because at our age, I think we're all kind of engaged in the task of sort of putting together the meaning of our life. And so the question of how did we get to be where we are is really essential in terms of the sort of development of who we are. So I like the question. I think for me at least, getting an understanding that I'm a product of the 60s was helpful to me to understand how much I question. The culture of the 60s, I think for all of us, supported questioning what authority was about. And so I kind of grew up in a culture that affirmed questioning for my generation at least. And I think that was really helpful to me, that I could keep questioning. And on into the rest of my life, maybe not, I wasn't as rebellious, but I still questioned. Huh?
Do you think, though, that it's almost a natural part of development that at some point when you reach adolescence,
Sure.
you
Yes.
question or not?
Yes. No, I think it is.
But I think the way in which, the culture in which we grew up put reins and
Yes.
covers on those,
Yes.
on that propensity to question.
Yes. I think that's right.
But that's a good point. I mean, think about if we hadn't grown up in the 60s, would we all have gotten to where we are now?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think so.
Well, and I'm trying to understand. I didn't grow up in the 60s.
You didn't, no.
So,
Yeah.
and you grew up before the 60s.
Way before.
So, when I heard you say that, it made me think, yeah, if you're in the 60s generation, questioning just happened, question authority. I don't know. I'm thinking when I grew up, maybe it was just because of family or church that I didn't feel as able to question myself.
Okay.
That I can remember. That was something that was just, it came more with adolescent growing. You know, you're away from home, things are different, and then you start trying to form your own identity and try to figure out, well, who am I?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
not what I was taught or what I was supposed to believe, but who am I? You know?
So it was a more natural developmental process
Yeah.
in a way for you.
Right. I think so when I hear that. Yeah.
I always felt inadequate.
Because
I was doing things that were against the church.
But again, your life experiences, education is a lot of experience, life experience. And
Well-
you have had a lot of life experiences that none of us have had.
Yeah. It comes to mind the Army, 2 years in Germany.
Yeah.
I think your recovery experience is
Well, that
way,
kept me alive.
not only that, it made you a more open person.
and
Yeah.
more
Oh.
respected, I think, than you give yourself credit for.
You have, yeah, you're right.
Recovering people tend to look, oh, I'm just such a rot. I do it with my own recovery.
Do you?
Of course, yeah, I'm a shit, but you're a respected shit.
Don't do this to me. I got to carry that with me.
Do you think that going on from high school into some form of additional education also plays a role in
Yeah.
moving out of what we were into something else? Although I have to rephrase that question. I'm not sure. Do we turn into something else, or what is the shift? That's the other way of asking this question.
Yeah.
Does our core personality stay the same?
I think there are pieces of the early childhood stuff that stays, that persists. But that there's significant change around asking the questions and having experiences that challenge our earlier life experience. And that's really important. But I think education was a piece of that. That the atmosphere of the college or university is an atmosphere of exploration and pursuit of new and different knowledge, information, and experience.
And for me, because I grew up within a Christian college, which was a continuation of everything that I had been taught of how to look at the world. But I remember when I went to the University of Iowa, being very concerned that I had to be guarding my faith because it could be challenged. And that's exactly what happened.
Uh-huh.
I mean, just getting to know people who didn't share my way of interpreting religion, but had a much different or no religion.
Yeah, yeah.
And the fact that they were, as far as I could tell, as good a person as I was, rocked my whole
Right.
way of thinking about myself and my position in terms of believing something that was absolutely right.
When you were at Iowa, you met a lot of people who weren't Christian
Yeah.
or Christian Reformed, and you also experienced they're pretty good people.
Yeah, exactly.
And when we grew up, we got a corner on the market.
Yeah.
The truth market, the meaning market,
Yeah.
the goodness market. We didn't.
Yeah.
So hearing your story makes me think about mine, which is kind of a difference because born in South Holland area, which was more conservative, my folks moved to Iowa when I was 6. We went to public schools. So I was engaged. I mean, it was a nice community and a lot of Christians in the community, but just public schools. Then when I went off to Calvin, I experienced that as a real subculture that I didn't know who I was in there because I went and I was the only person from my graduating class that went to Calvin. And then and since I knew my family had Christian Reformed roots, and then we were away from the Christian Reformed Church, we were in a Reformed church, but coming back to the Christian Reformed Church, and then it just felt like this subculture that I didn't know who I was in that boat. And so I was kind of trying to find my way in a sense, and try to understand that. So it made me a little more, I don't know, it just made me a little more guarded because I wanted to fit in, and I also was trying to find my way.
Yeah. So in some ways, you couldn't get a feeling of belonging. It took work,
Yeah,
in a way, to feel like you belong somehow to that Dutch Christian Reformed culture.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had somewhat similar experience in that I grew up in North Dakota. Now, there was a small Dutch farming community, but it was very different. When I was 9, we moved to Holland, Michigan. So that was a very different Dutch Christian Reformed culture
Yeah.
than was true. And so I came in sort of questioning that and not feeling like I belonged. And I think my parents felt like they didn't belong either, even as much as they wanted to belong. But that was coming into it. And then it was a matter of differentiating out of it later for me. And this is a little story.
Yeah.
The anxiety for me when I went to California and went into grad school in a Methodist and Disciples of Christ institution, grad school. The first day of registration, I had developed a rash on my feet, and so I couldn't go to registration. Now, it tested out as that I was allergic to a dye in a new pair of tennis shoes that I had. I said, no. There was my anxiety
Yeah.
about going to this other school that was so bad place in terms of my previous Calvin Seminary culture. That I was going into terrible connections. So
And this is at what age?
I was let's see, 22 or so, somewhere in there.
Getting married about that time?
Yeah, I'd gotten married 3 years earlier.
Oh,
I find that marriage can contribute to a rash. So I think not just our education, our culture, but our experience changes our belief system.
Yeah.
We were taught predestination. We were taught God has his hand on everything. Nothing happens outside of his will. I always chafed against that. In the second year of seminary, I'm sure you remember the story, I had an experience on a summer assignment. Reverend was the pastor, and he had a daughter. The last weekend we were there on a summer assignment at a picnic at his house. And where's his daughter? Look all over the net. She's gone. Call the police. She was kidnapped. Long story made short, she was abused, molested, tied to a tree, thrown off a bridge that is in South Bend, Indiana, into the St. Joseph River, and she emerged. People on the riverbank heard her screams, rescued her, brought her back. But by then, the damage was not only done to me, but the pastor too. How could God allow this to happen? And if he did, the hell with this God. And that sticks with me today. When something comes down, are we going to say, let go and let God? No friggin' way. Make our own way, because we are on our own. That blew up. I mean, blew up my tradition, but I was a second-year seminarian. But I stuck with it and acted out in so many different ways, theologically, morally, practically. Screw this. I have who I am today. I have nothing to do with the God I was raised in. In fact, I still struggle.
You do. You still struggle.
I struggle almost every. Is this a real thing? This God talk?
So when you had this kind of shock to your system with that kidnapping, and you kind of made you challenge everything, what you had, how did that affect you from that point on? Did you continue to talk and preach and think as you did before, only you were acting a little bit? Or did it actually change?
Was I acting a little bit? I landed on grace. That was my message. Grace, grace, grace. Grace to me, grace to you, grace to all of us, broken people. And then I went through my own personal trauma, a divorce, righteously booted out. And the trauma experience, I don't want much grace from me.
Well,
Even though I thought I was righteously given this new hope.
yeah. You and I have had very similar experiences,
Yeah.
except I wasn't a pastor, so it probably wasn't quite as hard for me. But I basically felt booted out of the religious community when I had the affair and the divorce. So that was, going back to your thing about something pleasurable, was happening in that attraction in the affair. But it was immediately clamped down on by my upbringing that said, no, you cannot
Right.
do this. So for 5 years, I was betwixt and between that rock and a hard place. But I think it's out of that intense and long-term trauma and kind of the depression that went along with it that finally propelled me into a much, much different person today than I was prior to that.
I think we drink the Kool-Aid when we're children. We don't have a
Yeah,
choice.
absolutely.
That is, we just drink the Kool-Aid. And then we got to wake up and deal with the Kool-Aid and in order to become adult in a way. And I like it, you know, you're talking about your experience with the affair, divorce, and so forth. In some ways, the struggle, the deeper struggle, I think, is how do you make meaning out of life when you and have to put together some understanding of both pain and pleasure. That, in some ways, just to make it concrete, probably making some sense out of the pain in the relationship, marital relationship that you had, and some sense out of the pleasure in another relationship. The root stuff is how do you put together pain and pleasure in making meaning? Because in some ways, if everything in life is a consequence of divine decisions, and I just go along with it, I don't have to make sense out of that. Then pain is something that
It's God's will.
God's will, and pleasure is somehow God's will, and I just have to deal with whatever I have, and I have no responsibility in it. It's but when we have to deal with pain and pleasure together, then we have to deal with responsibility in a different sort of way.
That we are responsible, not God.
That's right.
We are the ones who are responsible for pain and pleasure, making meaning out of it, purpose.
Well, and yeah, it's the kind of question of what are we responsible for and what are we not responsible for. So,
So it's
By-
there's a partnership between us and God.
Well, that's one way to think about it.
Well,
Yeah.
I've mentioned in this group before that one of my best friends now is this 99-year-old nihilist. And what helps us, I don't, he doesn't tolerate my God, my belief in God, He thinks I'm crazy. There's nothing out there, man. There's nothing. But it's your choice. But what keeps us together is we really like each other.
So in a sense, he does tolerate
He tolerates.
your belief.
He tolerates me, and more than tolerates me. He loves me,
likes you.
and I love him. And but he thinks what I think is just goofy. But we laugh with each other. We're able. I'm able to. He's a Jewish fella, and I said, "You left your tradition. You're the chosen one. God thinks you're nothing but peaches and cream. What's wrong with you?" And he laughs and all that. But it's.
But you can say those kinds of things with some humor.
And we could say anything to each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's so there has to be a relationship, sister,
maybe
brother,
that's the key.
friend, that makes all the difference. And I love it. I love to talk to people who are so weirdly different, from me, and I from him.
And that to me is energizing
Yes.
because you see the spectrum of life, you meet so many people, and you're not in this little silo. So that's life-giving for me. I loved working in the hospitals and meeting different people, and it was just. I mean, right now I'm even working a couple days in the hospital, a couple in hospice, and I've been in the hospital this past couple weeks, a few more days because people on vacation or sick, and I started realizing I really miss that interdisciplinary rounding and getting to know people. It's just energizing, life-giving.
I think that the search for truth, and the emphasis is on the search, in some ways more than the truth.
Yes.
That to have the truth and feel like I've got it, that's problematic for me. That I always want to be questioning, and I want to be on the search for truth, and that's really critical for my staying alive. I feel like if I don't, the danger is that I end up dying. And to some degree, that's a challenge as a senior, I think, is how do I stay alive? How do I keep some energy? And part of that is the searching the truth for my life. What's the meaning? What's the truth of what this is about?
Staying open is vital.
I think so. But I think there's another piece. Now I want to come back, and you talked a little bit about having some sense of your own spirit as you were in chaplaincy and working with all of that. And that's a kind of question of, I think there is still a kind of divine energy, however one wants to label it, that is moving always towards wholeness. And that's a piece of what happens too. But it's like, just picking up what you were talking about, is that in some ways it is coordinated with experience. That somehow becoming aware of particular divine energy happens through an experience. It's the experience that's needed at the same time. But the experience without the divine energy, I think, might have no meaning. But both are kind of always there. There's always something in me pushing me towards more wholeness.